Capital is more important than your life in this game. Welcome to stealth trading. There's a famous saying among serious traders: protect your capital like you're protecting your life. Sounds dramatic, doesn't it? But if you've ever been through devastating losses, if you've ever blown up an account with just one reckless click, you know it's not just money you lose. It's your time, your opportunity, and everything you've been building on this long road through the markets. But sadly, most people enter trading without understanding that. They come in with a let's try and see mindset, or worse, the gamblers go big or go home mentality. They treat every trade like a bet, and when their account gets chopped in half, they blame the market, the news, the broker, the spread, everything but themselves. I've been there too. When I first entered the market, I brought in a little over $1,000. Not a fortune, but it was everything I had saved from working side gigs. I thought I was smart. Fast learner. Good logic. I was convinced I could double that money in just a few weeks, and I almost did. A string of early wins convinced me that trading was easier than people said. I started increasing position sizes, removed stop losses, traded on gut feeling. I believed I had the gift. Then came one Thursday night. A surprise interest rate decision sent gold crashing. I didn't even have time to process what was happening. My account was bleeding red. Panicked. I doubled down to recover and lost again. By the next morning, I had $12 left in the account. I sat there, staring at the screen, and couldn't cry. Not because of the money, but because I had lost something far more valuable, and I hadn't even realized it while it was slipping away. That was the day I started over, with a new mindset. Trading isn't a fast money game. It's a long process, and the first rule of survival is to preserve capital. Let me ask you, do you ever enter a trade without knowing how much you stand to lose? Have you ever traded emotionally, just trying to make it back? Do you think capital is easy to regain, when in truth it costs time, energy, and painful lessons to rebuild? If the answer is yes, you're not alone. Almost every trader starts out that way. But here's the problem. Not everyone stops in time to fix it. Not everyone is lucky enough to still have capital left to learn the next lesson. Capital preservation sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to practice consistently. I.e., it requires discipline to say no to tempting trades, the strength to stay out when the market is going wild, and the humility to understand that in trading, survival is your first victory. This video isn't about quick profits. It's not about the next hot setup. It's for those who've tasted loss, who've felt confused, broken, and asked themselves, what did I do wrong? It's for you to pause and ask yourself, if I treated my capital like it was my lifeline, how would I trade differently? People often say if you lose money, you can make it back. But if you lose your capital, truly lose it, you may never get another chance to start over. Capital isn't just the number in your trading account. It's your oxygen as a trader, the very breath that keeps you alive in the markets. Even with the best strategy, solid mindset, and edge, if you don't protect your capital, nothing else matters. I didn't believe this at first either. I thought capital preservation was just for scared traders, people too afraid to take risks. But after blowing up multiple accounts, I finally understood. Only those who've nearly suffocated in this market can truly appreciate the value of oxygen. I have a friend, a former software engineer. He wasn't flashy, didn't use complicated strategies, but he survived for years in the market with just one rule: never let his account drop below 80% of its original value. His stop losses were clear. He never moved them. No matter how crazy the market got, he told me, I may not win big, but I know how to survive. And he was right. While others flew high on leverage only to crash on sudden news events, he grew his account slow and steady. There was one time geopolitical tensions rocked the markets. Everyone in our trading group got caught up trying to revenge trade their way back. Everyone except him. He cut his losses early, stayed out for a week. When he returned, his capital was intact. More importantly, his mindset was untouched. Capital preservation sounds easy, but it's a long journey of discipline, of resisting temptation, of truly knowing yourself. Ask yourself, have you ever entered a trade without knowing what you'd lose if you were wrong? Have you moved a stop loss just because the market might come back? Have you held on to losing trades too long, simply because you didn't want to admit you were wrong? These are common, but they're dangerous, because every time you do it, you're trading your capital for emotion. You're letting blind hope control your actions, and you're slowly suffocating the very oxygen your account needs to survive. Let me share another story. It's about a young woman I once spoke with in a trading community. She started out with just $500, trading very cautiously in the early days. Every position had a stop loss, small sizes, clear strategies. Slowly, her account grew to $600, then $700. But then, just one misread piece of news. One trade, bigger than her usual size. She wanted to go for a big win. The market moved against her, but she didn't cut the loss. She told me, I believe it'll come back. By the time her account dropped to $100, she finally closed the position. But it was too late. See, capital preservation isn't just about knowing when to cut losses. It's about knowing when to pause, when to step away, when to breathe. The traders who last in this game aren't the ones who win the most. They're the ones who know when to back off. They understand that having capital means having options. No capital, no choices. You're just a spectator, watching others play the game. After a string of trades, I often ask myself one question. If my next trade loses, how much longer can I survive in this market? That question grounds me. It keeps me from chasing fast profits. It reminds me, trading is not a place to show off your ego. It's where you learn to control it. So where is the line between cutting a loss and being stubborn? That's what I want you to really think about after this. Many traders confuse patience with courage. But if you're holding a losing trade with no strong technical reason, no risk mitigation plan, that's not courage. That's recklessness. And the line between courage and recklessness is thinner than you think. Look back at your most recent losses. How many of those could have been closed earlier? How many were kept alive just because you didn't want to admit defeat? Capital preservation isn't something you learn overnight. It's a daily practice, a discipline forged in humility. It's a habit. Choosing to protect your capital over listening to emotional impulses. That's why I call it both the first and final lesson in trading. Because even after you become experienced, even after you become good, if one day you forget this lesson, you can still lose everything. All it takes is one unexpected news event, one wrong click, and suddenly you're starting over with a new account and an old regret. So if you still have capital in your account today, ask yourself, are you protecting it the right way? Are you trading with a capital preservation mindset? Or are you gambling with your luck? And are you clear-headed enough to know the difference between being patient with a strategy and being stubborn for your pride? The answer is in how you trade every single day. If this message resonates with you, leave a like so we can share this value further. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Let's help each other avoid the mistakes that cost the most. If the first part was a wide-angle view of the life or death role of capital, then this part is a deep dive into the hardest question. Where's the line between cutting a loss and refusing to let go? It's a question every trader carries, but few dare to face. Because sometimes you think you're being patient, but you're really just being stubborn. You think you're giving the market space to breathe, but you're really letting risk spiral out of control. I remember a friend once told me about a principle that kept him alive in this wild market for 3 years. I always know how much I'm willing to lose before I enter the trade. He never entered a position without a clear stop loss, never increased his size just because he had a few wins, and most importantly, he never broke his own capital rules, not even once. One time, he saw a beautiful setup on gold, 4-hour chart. It matched his prediction exactly, but the risk on that trade exceeded his limits. So he let it go. He watched the price move exactly as expected, but he didn't enter. When I asked if he regretted missing out, he just smiled. If I spent my time regretting every trade I didn't take, I wouldn't still be here. That's real discipline. And that kind of discipline doesn't come from books or charts. It comes from experience, from painful losses, from nights where your account bleeds red because you didn't set a stop, from overconfidence, from gut feelings that led to disaster. At the end of the day, preserving capital comes down to one thing: knowing you can be wrong. And only when you truly accept that, you begin to grow in this game. Too many traders place bets with the mindset, I'm definitely right. So when price goes against them, they don't cut. They widen the stop. Then they delete the stop altogether. They keep hoping. And slowly, like someone being drained of oxygen, their account suffocates, and they don't even realize it until it's too late. I call that the invincibility illusion. Have you ever been there? Have you ever thought, there's no way the market will go against me this long? It's just a pullback. It'll come back. Let me just add more money to keep this trade alive. If yes, then you're walking very close to the edge, and it only takes one slip to lose everything. Over the years, observing and talking with countless traders, from fresh-faced beginners to hardened survivors with over a decade in the game, I noticed one thing they all have in common. None of them made it because of one massive win. They made it because they learned how to lose. They survived because they accepted small losses and made sure they stayed small. One veteran trader once told me, "Every trade I enter already has a stop loss. I never bet my life on something uncertain." So, let me ask you, what about you? Are you placing everything on one trade, hoping it turns your whole story around? Are you clinging to the belief that the more pain you endure, the more likely you are to win? If your account dropped 20% today, would you pause and reflect? Or would you keep trading, trying to get it all back? We all know the market never runs out of opportunities. What runs out is your clarity when you're caught in the emotional spiral tie. Protecting capital is what forces you to sit still, to observe, and to plan. It's your life jacket in an ocean of volatility. Without it, every skill you've acquired becomes irrelevant. Imagine a deep-sea diver. Before diving in, he checks his oxygen tank. No one goes deep knowing their oxygen is halfway gone, unless they're not planning to come back. Trading is no different. Each trade you enter without knowing your risk is like diving deep without checking your oxygen. And we both know what happens when the oxygen runs out. Trading isn't the art of guessing tops and bottoms. It's the art of staying alive. I get it. No one wants to cut a loss. Clicking that red close button feels like getting slapped by reality. But sometimes, that slap is exactly what wakes you up from the dream that this one will work. And when you finally ask yourself, is this trade slowly killing me? That's the moment you've grown a little wiser. Capital preservation is knowing when not to fight. Not every battle is worth showing up for. Not every signal deserves your belief. Try going a full week without placing a single trade. Just observe. Notice the difference between impatience and true readiness. You'll start to feel it. Sometimes the best position is no position. And remember, as long as you have capital, you still have hope. Here's the paradox of trading. The more desperate you are to make fast money, the quicker you lose it. Most new traders ask, how do I win big? What's the best reward to risk ratio? What's the most effective strategy? But very few ask, how do I keep my account from blowing up? How do I make sure I still have money to keep learning after I make a mistake? That's the difference between those who survive and those who quit. If you want to walk this path long term, inspiration won't be enough. You need a capital strategy like you're building a house, solid enough to shelter you for a lifetime. And to do that, you need to lay 3 critical bricks. Brick 1. Limit your risk per trade. It sounds basic, but most traders ignore it. They enter trades emotionally, set random stop losses, or worse, none at all, and comfort themselves with, "I'll know when to exit." But the market doesn't wait for you to decide. Every trade should have a predetermined risk level, not decided after entering, but before. Know how much you're willing to lose if the trade goes against you. A common rule is to risk just 1% of your account per trade. Some say up to 2%, depending on your tolerance, but never allow one bad trade to wipe out 20% of your capital. Remember, being wrong is normal. Getting wiped out isn't. Brick 2. Place logical stop losses, not emotional ones. Many traders place stops based on round numbers, gut feelings, or after entering a trade. That's like driving a car without knowing where the brakes are. A proper stop loss should sit where your analysis has clearly failed. For example, if you're buying at support, your stop should be placed below that support, a level that, if broken, tells you the market is no longer in your favor. To do this well, you need to understand market structure, price zones, and behavior. Not to complicate things, but to turn stop losses into protection, not punishment. Sometimes, just a little more precision makes a huge difference. I once knew a trader with laser-like discipline. He never risked more than 1% per trade. But what made him stand out? He waited for high probability zones, confluences of support, accumulation volume, and reversal candles. His stops were tight, just a few pips away, but his average reward was 3 times the risk or more. That year, when gold crashed hard from $3,000 down to $2,800, he was one of the few who didn't just survive. He came out profitable. Why? Because every trade he entered like a soldier, with a plan, a fallback point, and the clarity not to get swept away by the waves. He knew when to stay out. Preserving capital isn't just about placing a stop loss. It's about knowing when not to trade. Most traders are so afraid of missing out that they jump into the market constantly, even when the signals are murky. They call it gut feel or reading the market. But in truth, it's just impatience in disguise. The market doesn't always present clear opportunities. Some days are just noise, full of traps, fake-outs, and manipulation. If you're not patient, you become prey. Sometimes, the smartest move is to do nothing at all. A seasoned trader once told me, "Sit out for a few days and you'll realize not losing money is a win in itself." I never forgot that. Capital preservation isn't always about action. It's about the discipline of inaction. It's not flashy. It doesn't get attention, and it won't double your account in 3 days. But it builds the foundation that lets you survive, endure the roughest waves, and stay in this game for years. Let's say you lose 7 trades in a row, risking only 2% each time. You still have nearly 85% of your account. But if you lose just 3 trades where you risk 20% each, you're left with less than half. It's not about how many wins you get. It's about how you handle losses. So ask yourself, do you have a capital preservation strategy? Do you limit your risk per trade? Do you set your stop loss based on logic or on emotion? Do you have the strength to sit out when the market is unclear? If your answer is no, you're not alone. Many traders struggle with this, but the starting point isn't a tool or an indicator. It's your mindset. If you want longevity in trading, you can't rely on luck. You need a foundation, And that foundation is preserving capital. Because only when you still have capital can you fix your mistakes, learn, improve, and survive. The market doesn't always follow a logic you can understand. There are days when gold spikes without warning, then crashes because of a headline no one saw coming. Weeks where price grinds sideways and violates every support and resistance level you trust. In the chaos, the trader who survives is not just technically skilled. They know how to control themselves. Have you ever opened a chart, saw price dropping fast, and your finger instinctively moved toward the buy button? Ever felt the urge to jump in so you don't miss the move, only to realize minutes later you bought the top? In that moment, you're no longer in control. The market, your emotions, are driving your decisions. Capital preservation is really about preserving the last bit of clarity in the storm. I remember a week just like that. Gold shot up to $3,500, then collapsed to $3,260 in 2 days. Signal groups went wild. Trades were flying non-stop. Everyone believed, this is the moment, we must act. And I almost got caught in it. The chart was clean. The signals were aligned. Everything screamed, enter now. But then I remembered what a mentor once told me. When the market is going insane, don't try to be the calm one by forcing a trade. Stay sane by sitting it out. So I stayed out the entire week. Looking back, I have no regrets. I'm grateful. Grateful that while others chased setups, I protected my capital. And more importantly, I protected myself. Because when the frenzy took over, people started doubting their strategy. They removed their stops. They doubled their position sizes to get back losses. And by week's end, they weren't just down money. They'd lost their confidence and clarity. Have you ever felt that? If you have, you know the real chaos isn't the 400 pip red candle. It's the storm inside your head when you no longer know why you're doing what you're doing. Capital preservation is a rational act in an irrational environment. You preserve your capital when you say no to a tempting but unclear setup. You preserve it when you stop after a winning streak because you know the market moves in cycles. No one wins forever. You preserve it when you sense noise and choose not to force a trade just to hit a daily quota. I once met a veteran trader who had a strange rule. If a chart made him tilt his head, he wouldn't trade it. Tilting your head, he said, is the first sign of confusion. Have you ever tilted your head at a chart, trying to find the trend when there is none? Trying to force a bias while your mind is a mess? That's your sign to step back. In a world that never stops moving, standing still is one of the hardest and strongest decisions you can make. Preserving capital isn't weakness. It's the mindset of someone who understands the long game. Think back on your losses. How many of them happened because you didn't have a strategy? And how many happened because you had a strategy but lacked the discipline to follow it? How many times were you beaten by the market? And how many times did you really just beat yourself? Preserving capital is your way of saying, I choose calm over chaos. I choose patience over panic. I choose to survive, not die chasing fake glory. And you know what? It's during those days when you don't trade that you learn the most about yourself. To preserve capital is to preserve a second chance, a future trade where you're no longer rushed, no longer led by fear, and no longer paying a heavy price for a single click. Preserve capital, and you preserve yourself in the chaos. Are you willing to stand still while the rest of the world runs? Can you stay calm while everyone else is making predictions? More importantly, can you choose not to trade when the market is unclear? That is the real test, not for beginners, but for those who want to walk the long road. Trading is not a place to prove how smart you are. It's a place to learn humility and to preserve capital. And capital is where that humility begins. If you've lost big before, you already know. Capital isn't just money. It's time. The hours you spent studying. It's energy. The nights you stayed awake watching candles flicker. It's sacrifice. Missed dinners with friends, lost weekends, broken sleep. If you still have capital today, be grateful, because it means you still have a chance. I know how hard it is to hold on to anything in a market that can flip in seconds, but if you can hold on to your capital, you can hold on to your balance. And if you can hold on to your balance, you can hold on to yourself. You may not be a great trader yet, but you can be a surviving one. And sometimes, surviving takes you further than brilliance ever will. Thank you for listening, for not skipping past what may seem too basic, for letting me speak about something most traders overlook: preserving capital. I hope when this video ends, you don't rush back to your charts. I hope you take a moment to look inward. And if you can, ask yourself, the last time you cut a loss, was it discipline or fear? The last time you held on to a trade, was it confidence or stubbornness? And the last time you seriously thought about preserving your capital, when was that? Don't answer now. Just let the questions sit. Because one day, when your hand's hovering over the buy button, or your pulse spikes watching a candle collapse, those questions might come back. And maybe, just maybe, they'll help you save part of your capital that you would have otherwise thrown away. Preserving capital might seem like a small thing, but it's the one thing that shapes your entire journey. So slow down, breathe, and remember, sometimes it's not that you're not good enough. It's just that you haven't been clear-headed enough to protect the one thing you need to guard first. Thank you to you, still sitting quietly in front of the screen, listening to these words, watching this story unfold piece by piece, tiny slices of truth from the battlefield of trading. Thank you for letting me walk beside you, even if only for the length of this one video. In a world full of noise, full of promises of high returns, secret systems, and unbeatable strategies, I have nothing magical to give you. Only this: a story I lived, a truth I earned, mistakes I made, losses I took, capital I nearly lost, but managed to keep. And because I kept it, I kept myself. Thank you for staying until the end. This journey is yours now. Protect it.